They came in the darkest hour, when the snow made every sound feel far away, and the wind covered sins like a blanket. 3 men moved across the yard of a lonely cabin, clinging to Raven Ridge in the Colorado Rockies. Their breath rose in white puffs, their boots squeaked once, then learned to step softer. A chain on the small corral lay stiff with ice. One of them lifted bolt cutters and snapped the link like it was no more than a twig. The chestnut mare inside tossed her head and stamped, nervous and bright-eyed. A white blaze ran down her face like a mark of pride. One man grabbed the lead rope and whispered a laugh. He thought the mountain had already swallowed the widow whole. "She will not catch us," he said, "not with these passes sealed up." What he did not know was that someone watched from the cabin window, still as a grave marker. She was not crying, she was not begging, she was memorizing. Her name was Sarah Callan, and the folks in the towns below did not say it out loud unless they had to. Some called her a widow. Some called her a curse. The older men called her something else when they sat near a fire and stared into it too long. The ghost of the mountain. By the time the first light touched the peaks in violet and gold, Sarah stood in her doorway with the cold biting her cheeks. She was 43, weathered by hard winters, with dark hair braided back and threaded with silver at the temples. Her face carried the kind of calm that came from surviving things most people never had to face. She watched the last shadows fade down the ridge with her mare behind them, and something quiet inside her turned sharp. That horse was not a luxury. That horse was her life. Without that mare, she could not haul firewood through drifts taller than her waist. She could not carry meat down to town to trade for flour and lamp oil. She could not outrun a storm when the sky snapped open. The mare had been the last gift from her husband Daniel before the mountain took him and left Sarah alone with a cabin, a grave, and too much silence. Now the silence had been broken by thieves. Sarah did not rush. She moved with a slow, careful purpose that looked almost peaceful, but it was not peace. It was control. She packed only what mattered. From beneath a warped floorboard, she pulled a small leather pouch she had not opened in years. Inside was a cracked brass compass that still pointed true, a folded map marked with hidden cuts and high trails, and a hunting knife with a bone handle worn smooth by old hands. A crunch of hooves came up the path. Sheriff Tom Grady climbed the rise with his collar turned up, cheeks red from the cold. He looked like a man who had been running on worry for too long. "Sarah," he called, stopping a few steps away like he was not sure how close he was allowed to stand. Word hit town before sunup. Miles Drennan's boys were asking questions again. Sarah did not look at him right away. She crouched near the corral gate and touched the snow where the mare had been dragged out. The marks were fresh. A hoof had slipped. The mare had fought. "3 riders," Sarah said, her voice flat and steady. "They took my horse." Tom's jaw tightened. "Those men been hitting homesteads all winter. Summit Creek lost 2 good men last week. Sarah, I gotta say it plain, do not go after them. Not alone." A small smile touched her mouth for one heartbeat, then vanished. "I appreciate the warning." Tom watched her check her boots, custom-made with layers of deer hide, stitched to move quiet over snow. He had seen those boots before, back when she used to ride for bounties and missing men, back when her name traveled faster than the telegraph in some places. "Been a long time since anyone called you that," he muttered, as if the word itself might bring trouble. "That life is gone," Sarah said, as she slid the knife into a sheath strapped under her coat. Then her eyes lifted, hard as ice. "But they did not steal from a ghost. They stole from Sarah Keelan." Tom swallowed. "Drennan's got hideouts across 2 territories, lookouts in every town. If you leave, let me send telegrams. Get help moving." "No," she said, and the words snapped like frozen wood. "By the time anyone reads a wire, my mare will be sold to some rancher who does not ask questions. Or she will be dead. This is mine." Tom held her gaze and knew there was no arguing with whatever lived behind her eyes. He nodded once, slow. 3 days, she said. "If I am not back, send your wires." She stepped into the snow like she belonged to it. Her eyes moved over the ground the way a reader moves over a page. The trail spoke to her in small things most people missed. A broken pine needle. A scuff where a boot tried to hide. The drag mark where the mare had pulled back, stubborn and proud. By mid-afternoon, Sarah reached Devil's Backbone, a maze of red rock and narrow cuts most folks avoided. The wind there had a different voice. It carried secrets better. She followed the tracks through places a horse thief would never expect a woman on foot to go, and when she crested a high bluff, she saw smoke curling from an old mining site people called Broken Promise Mine. It was supposed to be abandoned. Down below, men moved between half-collapsed buildings. Horses were penned. Wagons sat in the wrong places, too neat for a simple camp. Guards paced like they had something to protect. Sarah's stomach went tight, not with fear, but with understanding. This was not a simple theft. She pulled a small spyglass from her pouch and stared into the largest shack, the old mine office. 5 men leaned over a table inside, and there, tall and solid at the center, stood a man with a pale scar cutting down one side of his face. Miles Drennan. Sarah's fingers closed around her knife without thinking. The scar looked like a memory that had refused to die. The wind shifted. Somewhere inside the camp a horse cried out, high and sharp, like it recognized her name. Sarah lowered the spyglass, her eyes cold and clear. She did not move yet. She waited, watching patterns, counting men, looking for the weak place in a strong wall. Because if Drennan was here, and her mare was here, then this was not just about stealing a horse. This was a trap. And Sarah Kellen had just walked straight into it. Night fell early in the mountains, and the cold came down like a hand pressing on a throat. Sarah stayed high above Broken Promise Mine, tucked behind a boulder where the wind could not reach her as hard. She watched the camp the way a wolf watched a herd, patient and careful. Men moved with purpose. This was not a loose gang of thieves. They posted lookouts, walked the same paths, and guarded the pens like those horses were gold. Down in the corral, her chestnut mare paced alone, head high, refusing to settle. Even from far away, Sarah could see the white blaze flash when the mare tossed her head. The sight hit Sarah in the chest like a quiet ache. Daniel's last gift. Her last way to live through winter, stolen in one careless night by men who believed a widow could not bite back. Sarah waited until the campfires burned low and laughter turned into sleepy grunts. When the last cookpot was scraped clean and men drifted toward their shacks, she moved. She slid down the slope using the rocks as cover, stepping where the snow had blown off into bare ground so her boots made no sound. She did not rush. In this kind of place, rushing got people killed. A lone guard paced the outer fence, swinging a lantern in a lazy circle. Sarah studied his rhythm, then matched it, moving when his eyes turned away, freezing when his light swept back. She reached a line of rusted mine carts and crouched in their shadow. Voices drifted from nearby, 2 men talking near a small fire. "Drennan says the papers are coming tomorrow," one said. "Bankman from Denver, and that fat commissioner who signs anything." The other man spat into the dirt. "Good. Once them papers are signed, it will not matter who owns what. We will own the water. We will own the passes. Folks will sell their land or starve." Sarah's jaw tightened. Water rights. Land. This was bigger than horse theft. This was a plan to crush whole valleys under ink and threats, and men like Miles Drennan loved plans like that because they made him feel clean while he did dirty work. A soft sound came from the darkness behind the cook shack. Sarah turned, knife ready. But it was a woman, thin and shaking, carrying an empty bucket. Her face was bruised, and her hair was pulled back tight like she was trying to hide herself from the world. When the woman saw Sarah, her eyes widened, then filled with fear. Sarah stepped forward and caught her arm before she could cry out. "Quiet," Sarah whispered. "I am not here to hurt you." The woman's breath trembled. "You are her," she said, voice barely there. "The mountain ghost." Sarah did not answer the name. She only asked, "What is your name?" "Clara Hensley," the woman said. "They took me from a homestead near Eagle Pass." Said I could cook, clean, do whatever they wanted. Sarah's stomach tightened again, not with surprise, but with anger that stayed steady and cold. Are there others? Clara nodded, eyes darting toward the main shack. A boy. They keep him in the old foreman's room. He cries at night until they give him medicine to make him quiet. A boy, Sarah repeated, her voice suddenly sharper. Sheriff's son, Clara said, from Silver Creek. He is only 9. Quote. Sarah felt the air leave her lungs for a moment. A child held like a chain for grown men's plans. Drennan did not just steal horses, he stole futures. Sarah leaned closer. Where is my mare? Clara swallowed. Back corral. They call it special stock. Drennan is furious. Your horse threw 2 men. He said he will break her himself in the morning. Sarah's grip tightened on the knife until her knuckles ached. She forced her hand to loosen. Rage was loud. Loud got people caught. Listen to me, Sarah said. When the camp stirs tomorrow, you are going to keep your head down. You are going to stay alive. Can you do that? Clara nodded fast, tears freezing on her lashes. Sarah eased her back into the shadows. Go, she whispered, and do not let them see fear. Men like this feed on it. Clara slipped away, leaving Sarah with new weight on her shoulders. The mare was one thing. The boy changed everything. Sarah could not leave a child behind. Daniel would have haunted her if she did. She shifted closer to the foreman's quarters, a squat building with a broken window covered by a blanket. A single guard sat outside, half asleep, rifle across his knees. Sarah watched him for several minutes and noticed the small habits that gave him away. He rubbed his eyes. He leaned his head back. He fought sleep like it was an enemy. Sarah picked up a stone and tossed it far to the left, letting it clack against metal. The guard's head snapped toward the sound, and he rose, stepping away from the door. Sarah moved like a shadow, closing the distance in 2 quiet steps. She came up behind him and pressed the knife to the soft place under his jaw. Do not move, she breathed. The guard froze, then trembled. Who are you? Someone you will forget, Sarah said. She struck him hard behind the ear with the handle of the knife. His knees buckled and he crumpled without a shout. She dragged him behind a stack of rotting boards, tied his hands, and stuffed cloth between his teeth. Then she opened the door. The room smelled like sweat and old fear. A small boy lay curled on a cot, eyes wide and glassy like he was half in a dream. His cheeks were dirty, and his hands were scraped raw like he had tried to claw his way out. Sarah knelt beside him. Hey, she said, soft as she could, you are safe right now. The boy stared at her, not understanding. What is your name, she asked. Cale, he whispered. Cale Grady. Sheriff Tom's last name. Sarah's heart clenched. Tom had come up the ridge trying to warn her, and his own child was already caught in Drennan's trap. Sarah swallowed hard. Cale, I am going to get you out of here, but you have to do exactly what I say. Can you stand? Cale tried. His legs shook and he sat back down, face twisting with shame. They made me drink stuff, he said. I feel like my head is full of fog. Sarah steadied him. That is not your fault. Outside, a shout rang through the camp. Boots crunched. A man laughed too loud. The camp was not asleep anymore. Something had shifted, like a dog had smelled blood. Sarah lifted Cale carefully and set his arm over her shoulder. He was small, but he felt heavy with the weight of fear. They took one step toward the door, and a new voice cut through the night, low and sharp. You got a lot of nerve, Sarah Kalin. Sarah froze. Miles Drennan stood in the doorway, blocking the way out. The scar on his face looked pale in the lantern light, and his eyes held a cold kind of joy, like he had been waiting for this moment for years. 2 gunmen flanked him, rifles ready. Sarah's hand tightened on Cale's waist to keep him upright. Drennan's smile widened. I did not steal your horse just for money, he said. I stole her because I wanted you to come down from your ridge. I wanted to see if the ghost was still real. He glanced at the boy, then back at Sarah. Now you get to choose. You walk out alone, or you try to run with him and I put you both in the snow. Sarah's breath stayed calm, but inside her mind raced through every path, every shadow, every chance. And behind Drennan, in the back corral, her mare screamed once, loud and wild, like she knew the moment had come. Sarah did not answer Miles Drennan right away. She kept one arm locked around Cale's small shoulders and kept her eyes on Drennan's hands. A man could smile and still kill you. The scar on his cheek pulled when he talked, and the lantern light made his eyes look like wet stones. "You always did like standing tall," Drennan said, "even when you were just a skinny girl hiding in the smoke." The words hit Sarah like a blade sliding under old scars. He knew, he remembered, this was not just business. It was history. Sarah's voice came out low and steady. "Step aside." Drennan laughed and glanced at the two gunmen beside him. "She still thinks she can command a room." One of the gunmen shifted his rifle toward Cale, and Sarah felt the boy stiffen, fear rising in him like a cry he could not hold back. Sarah tightened her grip, a silent promise that she would not let him be used like bait. "Put the rifle down," she said, looking at the gunman, not Drennan. "If you shoot, you miss the truth of what you are doing. You are aiming at a child." The gunman hesitated for half a second, not because he grew a heart, but because he did not want trouble in his soul. Drennan noticed that pause and stepped closer, angry at any crack in obedience. "Enough," Drennan snapped. "Ghost or not, she is still one woman." Sarah's mind moved fast. She had seconds. The camp outside was stirring, men waking, voices rising. If she stayed trapped in this doorway, she would be pinned and swallowed. If she pushed forward, Cale would take a bullet meant for her. So she did the only thing she had always done. When the world offered two bad choices, she made a third. Sarah shifted her weight as if she was about to lunge, but instead she kicked a loose board at her feet. It skidded hard into the lantern stand beside the doorway. The lantern toppled, glass breaking, fire splashing across the snow and wood in a sudden burst. Men shouted. The two gunmen flinched on instinct. Drennan cursed and stepped back to avoid the flame. Sarah moved. She grabbed Cale under the arms and pulled him through the doorway at a sharp angle, not straight out into the yard. She hugged the wall of the foreman's shack and slid into the deeper shadow behind a stack of cracked timbers. The firelight danced wildly now, making every shadow jump. A rifle cracked. The shot hit wood where she had been a second earlier. Cale's breath came in broken gasps. "I cannot run," he whispered. "You can," Sarah said, and her voice did not allow him to doubt. One step at a time. They moved low, slipping behind a row of old barrels, then behind a wagon, staying close to the dark edges of the camp. Sarah's boots barely touched the snow. She could feel the whole mine site waking up, like a hornet nest kicked by a careless boot. Drennan's voice thundered across the yard. "Find her! Bring me the boy alive! Bring her alive if you can!" A man rushed past the wagon, close enough that Sarah could smell tobacco on his coat. He did not see them. His eyes were on the fire and the chaos. Then Sarah heard it, the sound that made her blood rise. Her mare screamed again. Sarah turned her head just enough to see the back corral through the gaps between buildings. The chestnut mare reared, fighting the rope on her halter. A young handler yanked hard, trying to force her down. The mare struck out with her front hooves and nearly crushed him. The animal was not broken. She was furious. Sarah leaned closer to Cale. "Listen, when I say go, you go to that rock line over there. You see it? Quote." Cale squinted. In the dim light, a jagged line of boulders stood like teeth along the edge of the camp. Beyond them was open darkness and a steep slope down toward the trees. "I see it," Cale whispered. "You will go there and you will stay low," Sarah said. "No matter what you hear. Can you do that?" Cale nodded, face tight with fear, but something steadier sat under it now. He had been afraid for days. At least, now he was afraid, with someone beside him. Sarah waited for a moment when the yard filled with movement, when men rushed in the wrong direction. Then she pushed Cale forward with a firm hand. "Go!" Cale stumbled, then ran, small legs awkward in the snow, but he kept moving. Sarah watched him reach the rocks and drop down behind them just like she told him. Relief flickered in her chest, but she did not let it soften her focus. Now she turned toward the corral. 2 guards stood near the gate, arguing with each other about where the fire came from. Their attention was split. Sarah picked up a fist-sized rock and threw it hard toward the far side of the pens. It struck a post with a loud crack. The guards snapped their heads toward the sound. Sarah rushed them. She did not swing wild. She hit fast and clean. The first guard lifted his rifle too late. Sarah drove her knife handle into his wrist, then into his throat. Not cutting deep, just enough to drop him into shock and silence. The second guard turned, mouth opening to shout, and Sarah slammed her elbow into his jaw so hard his teeth clicked like stones. He folded into the snow. Sarah grabbed the gate latch and pulled it open. The chestnut mare surged forward, eyes rolling, nostrils wide, hooves flashing. For one terrifying second, Sarah thought the mare might bolt past her and vanish into the night. But then the horse stopped short and pressed her head against Sarah's chest like she knew exactly who stood there. Sarah's throat tightened. "Easy," she whispered. "Good girl. I am here." Behind her, the camp roared with a new wave of shouting. Drennan had realized where she was headed. Sarah swung up bareback, her hands grabbing mane and halter. She turned the mare toward the rocks where Cale hid, and the mare moved like she had been waiting for this order her whole life. A rifle cracked again. Dirt jumped near the mare's hooves. Sarah did not look back. She leaned forward and whispered into the mare's ear. The mare launched into a run so smooth it felt like flying. Sarah reached the rocks. "Cale?" she called low. The boy rose from the shadow, trembling, and Sarah leaned down, grabbed his coat, and hauled him up against her. He clung to her waist with both arms, small and shaking. The mare's ears pinned back as more hoofbeats thundered behind them. Riders! Drennan had sent men on horses to chase. Sarah drove the mare toward the tree line, straight into the dark slope, where normal riders feared breaking a leg. The mare did not slow. She knew mountain ground. She cut down through pine and rock like she was born from the ridge itself. Behind them, voices shouted. Horses slipped. One rider cursed as his mount stumbled on shale. Sarah did not waste breath on fear. She used it. She chose a path no map held, a narrow cut between boulders where the wind screamed and the snow lay deep. The mare squeezed through with only inches to spare. The riders behind tried to follow, but their horses balked at the tight passage and the sudden drop beyond it. A gunshot rang out, then another, but the bullets hit rock and tree. Sarah burst out onto a narrow ledge trail that curved along the face of the mountain. Below was a steep fall into darkness. Above was cliff and cold sky. The mare ran the ledge like it was a wide road. Cale sobbed against Sarah's coat. "He is going to kill us," he whispered. "No," Sarah said. "He is going to lose us." Quote. The ledge trail ended near a stand of thick pines, and Sarah took the mare into them, weaving between trunks, letting branches slap her coat and sting her cheeks. The forest swallowed sound and hid them like a blanket. After long minutes, the hoofbeats behind grew faint, then scattered. The riders did not know the mountain the way Sarah did. In the dark, fear made men clumsy. Sarah slowed the mare to a careful walk. Her breath came out in long white clouds. Cale's arms loosened a little as he realized they were still alive. Then, from the trees ahead, a lantern glow appeared, and a voice called out sharp and familiar, "Sarah." Sheriff Tom Grady stepped into the open with 2 men behind him, rifles raised until they saw the boy on the mare. Tom's face went pale, then twisted with relief so strong it looked like pain. "Cale," Tom breathed, stumbling forward. The boy let out a sound that was half cry, half laugh, and leaned toward his father. Tom grabbed him, pulling him down into his arms, holding him so tight it looked like he was afraid the air would steal him again. Tom looked up at Sarah, eyes wet. "You did it!" Sarah slid off the mare, legs shaking now that the danger had passed. "He was bait," she said. "Drennan is not just stealing horses. He is taking land, water, people. Tom's jaw hardened. We have been trying to gather proof for months, but he always had someone inside warning him. Sarah nodded once. He wanted me to come. This was personal. Tom stared at her, and in his eyes Sarah saw the old stories and the new truth meet. What now? He asked. Sarah's gaze lifted toward the black line of the ridge, where the wind moaned like a living thing. Now, she said, voice quiet and cold, we stop him where he thinks he is safest. Tom's men shifted, nervous. He will come after you, one whispered. Sarah laid a hand on her mare's neck. The horse stood steady, chest rising and falling, eyes bright, still full of fight. Let him, Sarah said. The mountain has been watching him for years. Tonight it finally speaks back. Quote, and far off in the darkness, a single gunshot echoed from Broken Promise Mine, followed by shouting that carried up the valley. Drennan had realized what had happened. He had lost the boy, he had lost the mare. And now he knew the ghost was real. The wind rose harder, sweeping through the pines, and Sarah turned her face into it like she was listening to an old friend. Because this was not the end. This was the beginning of the hunt that would finish Miles Drennan for good.